Welcome to the Debrief, where we talk with the Washington Examiner's top journalists about the headlines they're covering this week and where the story is going next. I'm Sarah Westwood, and I'm here today with Editor-In-Chief Hugo Gurdon. And Hugo, in your column this week, you argue that Biden should escalate the war in Ukraine with Russia. Why do you say that?
I think that the extraordinary scenes and appalling scenes that we've seen from Bucha and other areas where the Russian forces have withdrawn of mass murder, deliberate execution-style killings, people shot in the head with whilst their hands are tied behind their backs, and then the efforts to burn the bodies to sort of hide the evidence, has made a compelling case, which I think a lot of the public would get behind, that Putin, who we already knew was actually running a campaign of military terrorism, it really is somebody who has to be defeated on the battlefield. There's been a sort of equivocal policy about exactly what we're trying to achieve in Ukraine, not escalating, not avoiding a wider war. Those things, of course, are important, but we've now arrived at a point where there is global understanding, and I think public recognition that this is a man who has to be defeated because he's an absolute menace. And the war has become sort of not exactly stalemated, but it's clear that nobody is actually winning.
Yeah, and you write that in that case, there have been experts that have predicted the Ukraine and Russia could become entangled in some sort of intractable, unwinnable situation. In that case, is there any action that the West could take that wouldn't be escalatory?
Yes, I think that the fact that it has become unlikely, or you can't see at the moment either side actually winning, is one of the reasons why there needs to be escalation. We have a policy at the moment where we are hesitantly supplying enough weaponry to the Ukrainians to ensure that Ukraine is not defeated, but we're not supplying enough weaponry to allow them to win. That condemns Ukraine and the millions of innocent people who, President Putin invaded unprovoked, to indefinite destruction, displacement, and death. And so there's a sort of a moral reason for escalation, and there's a practical reason as well. The possibility of Russian defeat in Ukraine is clear, and it's obviously not assured. And there are ways of escalating. You don't have to have American forces going into battle. What you do have to do, though, is not limit what you supply to what President Biden says will give the Ukraine a chance to defend themselves, and indeed the German Chancellor also used talked about them defending themselves. The Ukrainians should be allowed to go on opposition, and the only way they can go on opposition is if they're given the weapons that will allow them to dislodge the Russians from the conquered territories in the east.
And finally, switching gears a little bit, yeah. Texas Governor Greg Abbott has announced a plan to bus undocumented migrants to Washington, D.C. Do you think that's a smart strategy, or do you think it's just a little bit of political theater?
I think it's both. It's clearly a bit of a stunt. It's clearly a bit of theater. It was actually sort of rather amusing to listen to the governor announce this plan. But it's also very pointed, and it is no joke, because it emphasizes and demonstrates the fact that the cause of this problem, which has been dumped on Texas and the other border states, Texas, however, bearing the brunt of it with more than half the 2 million plus illegal immigrants who came to the United States last year, it returns at least a portion of those to President Biden's doorstep and Congress's doorstep. And it says, look, you've just instituted all of these policies, stanched the ability of the border guards, the border patrol to arrest these people. You're ending Title 42, which allowed them to remove illegal immigrants under COVID protocols. In other words, they've invited and made the problem worse. And Texas is saying, look, you can't just dump this on Texas and kind of blithely walk away. We're going to bring it back to you. And perhaps the arrival of hundreds of illegal immigrants on the steps of Congress will focus attention in Washington about changing the policy which Washington has caused.
Well, Hugo, thank you so much for being here today. You can get more writing from Hugo and the rest of the commentary team at WashingtonExaminer.com.